BYU's got to do more than just win against TCU.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth, and it's part of the number one sports podcast network out there. USC, do they have a new obstacle to face this week? Big game thoughts. Would you hire Brian Kelly? Would you? I'll explore that on today's show and come back with my best bets. Red hot, over 500, big week. Big week. I had 5 games, and then I added a 6th, and I'll explain all of that later on today's show. But let's start with BYU and TCU. Interesting matchup in Provo that throughout the week, there appears to be amongst some group of people somewhere a growing sentiment that Texas Tech exposed BYU last week and that TCU is capable of doing the same. I say that because unless I missed some massive piece of news, BYU has gone from a 6.5 point favorite, according to our friends at FanDuel, to a 3.5 point favorite. Now, I'm going to make my pick in this game later in the segment, but the importance of this game for the Cougars cannot be overstated. You know that adage, you only get one chance to make a first impression? Well, you only get one chance to make a next impression post a loss that the committee overreacted to. So BYU being down at 12, I believe is too low. I think BYU, based on their resume, has earned the right to be inside the top 10 because they've beaten everybody except Texas Tech. And everybody else across the country is getting basically a mulligan, a freebie, a do-over, except BYU. So the committee is clearly looking at BYU and say, see all those close wins? We knew you weren't actually that good. They're looking for a reason to disrespect BYU. They are seeking it out. That's the way that it seems. So when you go on the road and get handled by Texas Tech and then you come home to play a TCU team who's good, not great, but they are good, 6-3 overall, 3-3 in conference play, you would really like to do more than scrape by with a last-second field goal and win by a point or two, because that's going to give the committee, fair or not, more reason to justify keeping you down in the rankings and thinking about whether or not BYU would have to win the Big 12 in order to make the college football playoff or be left out at 10-2 for a second straight year. Now, the good news for BYU is I do think, more likely than not, I'm not 100% certain, but more than 50%, if the Cougars go 11-1, I think they'll wind up in the college football playoff. Plus, you have to remember, you could get some help. Because who's ahead of BYU this week? They are big fans of Alabama and Georgia. Because you would like Oklahoma and Texas to have a 3 in the loss column. That would be a great outcome for BYU if those two teams win. I think both of them will, by the way, for whatever that is worth. That's just how I see it. Maybe you see it differently. I'm not right 100% of the time. I feel good about those particular picks. But for BYU, the mindset for that football team has to be to tune out exactly what I just talked about. You have to go out and be able to showcase, you know what? By Texas Tech, I had a bad day. It wasn't good. And it was not good. Now you play a TCU team that throws the ball all over the field, doesn't run it at all. Ordinarily in these big games, many a times this year, I have said the team that runs for more yards will wind up winning the game. TCU could get outgained significantly in this matchup, and they could still wind up winning the football game. The Cougars could go for 180, BYU could go for 75, and TCU could still win. Why? Because Josh Hoover on any given day can go for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was my top quarterback in the Big 12 coming into this year. He has played good football. TCU's a good team. Again, not a great one. So if BYU wants to show that committee, hey, you better put us back in the top 10 if Texas and Oklahoma both lose, and you overreacted dropping us all the way down to 12 this past week, then guess what? Here's an opportunity to do it. Because apparently this is an upset special. This is in Provo. That's the other thing. BYU's coming back home after what happened last week in Lubbock. And if they don't look impressive, then they're going to be fighting a continuous uphill battle, and they'll have to win their final 3 games. And heck, maybe even the committee would keep him out at 11-2. I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to think about. I'm not saying it's guarantee. I'm just saying see how they react to the next few games for BYU. So you have a chance to come home and play TCU. Are you going to stop Josh Hoover? No. I think BYU's got to do 2 things in this game. Number 1, get the ground game going. Be at least 175 on the ground to help out Bear Bachmeier. But number 2, turn over TCU. You can do it. You can do it. BYU's got the defense to do it. So if the Cougars are able to do that, then they will get the win. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's by more than 10 points. But obviously, I'm not picking that here on the show. BYU fans, I'm not going back on our arrangement. I'm like Saito in Inception. I will honor our arrangement. Give me the upset. Give me the upset. TCU goes into Provo and knocks them out of the playoff. 27-24. TCU gets it done. Anyway, let's go back out west where the weather's always great. Southern California has the greatest weather of all time, and it never does. There's rain in the forecast in Southern California. I don't know who's freaking out more, the USC football team or drivers in Southern California. Have you ever been there and been around folks that are driving in the rain? You would think they have never seen water come out of the sky. It's a sight to behold. So USC, going into this game against Iowa, might be playing a warmer version of the game Oregon played against Iowa last week. Now, if you think stereotypically, you probably don't believe that USC under Lincoln Riley is built to win a football game like this. And I've seen plenty of folks picking Iowa to go out west and upset USC. It's entirely possible. Wouldn't shock me because Iowa's a good football team. Iowa's incredibly physical. Here's what I wonder, though. What is Iowa's motivation level in that locker room compared to USC? No Big Ten championship, no college football playoff. Those went out the window, particularly the playoff part for the Hawkeyes last week. Iowa going out west has not been a good combination over the years. USC controls its own fate to make the playoff. And USC runs the ball and defends the run better than you think. The ultimate ground and pound physicality based team is Michigan, who admittedly under better conditions went out west. It didn't go very well. 31-13 was the final. I think you could see a similar score here if and only if the rain's not as bad as it is projected to potentially be. Weathermen are not right 100% of the time. Kind of like me, honestly, if I'm just calling it how I see it and just how it is on the ground. I still think USC wins. A lot of people are going to rush to, Iowa's not. Nope. Or they're going to rush to USC won't be able to play in the rain. They can't do this. Nope. I'm just telling you right now. Nope. So give me USC. Give me USC to win. It's not one of my best bets because weather can make things crazy. But I think USC can do enough. And at home, I distrust Iowa out west more than I distrust USC in the rain. That's where it comes down for me. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at @LockedOn_CFB. All of that good stuff. Would you hire Brian Kelly? And I've got more games to pick. First, this episode brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, so let's actually look forward and preemptively crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Let's see who's going to deliver. How Nostradamus-esque can I be? Coach-stradamus, if you will. Spenstradamus. Can I become that? Ty Simpson for Alabama. Ty Simpson goes for 275 plus, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Oklahoma defense, and Alabama wins 31-17. That's one of my best bets later on today's show. I think Ty Simpson will make that happen. Here's another one. that's also going to be in my best bets. I think Jeff Brom, I won't go to any specific Louisville player because they can win in a lot of different ways. I think Jeff Brom will outcoach Dabo Swinney and get it done. I think they'll deliver for their teams like DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive and fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash today. Would you hire Brian Kelly? Just ask yourself that question. Now, you probably have the reaction, absolutely not. I think Brian Kelly and James Franklin have a lot in common. They didn't go to their most recent programs, what they were, of course, fired from. And I know there's a bunch of stuff working itself out with Brian Kelly and LSU and all that. Like, oh, okay, let's just look past that. That's not the interesting part of this conversation to me. That's just side drama. If you were a program looking to rebuild your image, to stabilize, would you hire one of these guys? Because if I were a certain program, a certain type of program, I should say, I'm not thinking one in particular, then yeah. Yeah, I would. I'd look at both. I think James Franklin has a better chance to succeed. Just kind of the vibe that I get. I think Brian Kelly's nature of being a little standoffish, a little combative, a little rugged, a little stiff, and other adjectives that fit the description and picture that I'm painting here, I think that could rub some fan bases and donor classes the wrong way. And if you don't have those folks on board at a lot of places, and dare I say most, that matters a whole heck of a lot. So I was thinking about this because all this Brian Kelly drama has been unfolding with his contract, and lawyers will figure it out and whatever. Billable hours forever and always, undefeated. I think that if you were a program like what I heard could be possible perhaps is Michigan State, if Jonathan Smith were to not work out and it's not going very well, they play Penn State this week in a battle of winless Big Ten teams. That's a crazy thing to say. Not where I thought either program would be at this point in the season. However, that's where we're at. If I'm a program like Michigan State looking to reestablish the floor, I'd take James Franklin, but if he said no, I'd see if Brian Kelly's interested. It's not as if his track record, if you took away the other stuff, if you felt like that wouldn't be a problem, or if he felt like he was improving in those particular areas, Brian Kelly's biggest sin at LSU was not hiring correctly. At first, he couldn't get a defensive coordinator. Then he made the wrong move after Mike Denbrock went back to Notre Dame. So I don't remember the exact career trajectory there. But when he left LSU, then the offensive coordinator wasn't the right move. But let's not pretend like LSU was awful, uninteresting, not capable. You think Michigan State right now, if Brian Kelly, if you were to give him a 5-year contract, and over the course of those 5 years, Michigan State, I told you right now, you were going to win, or UCLA, or Virginia Tech. Penn State is not the place. Not the place that Brian Kelly would go. But for those jobs that I just named, Arkansas, would you sign up for the next 4 years, and then you could fire Brian Kelly if you'd like, for a 4-win season, a 7-win season, an 8-win season, and then a 5-win season? Would you do that? Some places might not. Maybe he'd be able to do even better than that. Remember, in his first year at LSU, he got the Tigers. There were still divisions then, but he got them to the SEC championship game. Pretty sure there were still divisions then. Time is a weird social construct and such. Anyway, if you just look at the track record, though, at Cincinnati, at Notre Dame, at LSU, I don't have any reason to believe that Brian Kelly wouldn't go somewhere and be able to win if he's got the necessary resources. I doubt that he'd be able to win at the level that should lead him to be Florida's next head coach. And I have the same reservations about James Franklin. But for programs that have bottomed out, I mean, you could even think about, this seems like a crazy fit, but Oregon State, they're looking at other candidates like Nick Rolovich, maybe former Washington State and Hawaii head coach, or Paul Christ, former Wisconsin head coach. And those names make plenty of sense. But if you're thinking about the jobs that are open across college football, that's what I see Brian Kelly and James Franklin as. I would take Franklin over Brian Kelly because I think Franklin was closer to realizing the potential of his program there more recently than Brian Kelly was. But do I think either one has a floor so low they'd go somewhere and just completely flop? Again, it's not for a program that has super high aspirations. So if you view your team looking for a new head coach as one that should be able to compete for a conference championship year in and year out instead of once every 4 years, then no, Brian Kelly or James Franklin is not for you. But if you're just trying to have a transitional coach of sorts, talk about that word with quarterbacks a lot. If you're trying to do that with a coach, I think they could work. Maybe I'm crazy. Again, for the big time jobs, nope, absolutely not. If Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, no, Brian Kelly should not be the head coach for the Rebels. But at Virginia Tech, is that wild? Is that crazy? At Michigan State? You tell me. So, speaking of the ACC, Clemson goes to Louisville this week. And I'll tell you right now, this is going to be one of my best bets. I will talk about those later on the show. But Clemson goes to Louisville this week. Cardinals still have a shot to go to the ACC championship game thanks to their head-to-head win over Miami. But the home loss as an 18.5-point favorite, which was always a weird, crazy, wild line last week against Cal, I tell you what, it's a playoff shakeup, and it's helping Miami because the Hurricanes, as I discussed earlier this week, have a real shot now to be an at-large college football playoff team. Will they get there? Well, they'd have to survive NC State. Anytime Miami's a double-digit favorite, yeah, you can put them on upset alert. That's completely fair. Clemson traveling to Louisville this week. This will be the first best bet that I explain, and here's my reasoning. Louisville minus 2.5. At home again, in a desperation spot with regards to their ACC championship and therefore very slim but not technically impossible playoff hopes. After getting embarrassed at home last week, losing a heartbreaker. Look, they got emotionally drained. When you go to overtime, that happens. Maybe they've got nothing in the tank, and Clemson's playing with too much house money. But I think Clemson only being a 2.5-point underdog is a dramatic underreaction to the teams Clemson has beaten. Every time they've played a just good team in the ACC, they haven't won. Duke beat them, SMU beat them, but, they got Florida State and North Carolina. And I'm supposed to believe that they fixed themselves? No, I don't think so. I think Louisville wins. I think Louisville covers the 2.5. I will go 34-23. I think the Cardinals figure it out. Jeff Brom in a bounce-back spot there. Notre Dame goes to Pitt. I thought about this one earlier in the week, and I don't love the comments that you heard from, or maybe you haven't, from Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi saying, it doesn't matter if we lose this game big. It's a terrible message to send to literally everyone. Tell me why Pitt couldn't be an at-large college football playoff team. If the tiebreakers were to go in such a way that they don't make the ACC title game, if they beat Notre Dame and they beat Miami later this year and they're 10-2, tell me why they couldn't be an at-large bid to the playoffs. So I think that's the wrong way to go. So the natural gut reaction is to go with, well, that means Notre Dame's going to go in there and absolutely crush them. But Mason Heinschel is playing really good football. Notre Dame's pass defense up and down this year. I think this is one of those spots where I'm just going against the grain. It's not one of my best bets because I like Notre Dame a lot, and I'm a big CJ Carr fan, and I love watching Jeremiah Love play football. I'll take Notre Dame to win, but Pitt to hang around. 31-27. I think there are plenty of points between two good quarterbacks. Can I keep my best bets rolling? I am starting in the SEC. First, this episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Maybe like My Blazers do from time to time. See if they can get it done on Friday night against the Rockets. And we'll see how my best bets are going to do, because I have been on a heater the last couple of weeks. Am I due for a cool down? If you think so, guess what? You can fade the picks at FanDuel. If you think that's the way to go, 5-1 last week. I've got 6 more best bets this week, with some as random as we saw a week ago. Lines, of course, provided by our friends at FanDuel, and they make it really easy to navigate all the information you can want. Point spreads, point totals, money line, prop bets, everything you want is over there at FanDuel. So go check them out if you haven't already. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Alabama -5.5 against Oklahoma is my first and maybe my favorite best bet of the week. It's definitely first because it's the highest profile game that I have got on the board. All odds, of course, provided by our friends at FanDuel, the official sportsbook sponsor of the Locked On Network. Alabama -5.5, weird number. Weird number. How do you even get to a point where Oklahoma covers by half a point? You don't really. I mean, 23-17, I guess, is a score. I said Oklahoma covering by half a point. That'd be Alabama covering. So I think Alabama wins this game by more than a touchdown. I think they win it by double digits. I have the Crimson Tide winning 31-17 because the way that Ole Miss's defense went into Norman and kind of tore up the Oklahoma secondary provided a blueprint for a quarterback who's better than Trinidad Chambliss. And I like Chambliss. He's not just an awesome story. He's a really good football player for the Rebels, has been this season. Ty Simpson is playing at a higher level because Ty Simpson is playing at as high of a level as any quarterback in college football except for maybe Julian Sayin. Fernando Mendoza belongs in that conversation as well. Statistically, you'd have to give the edge to Ty Simpson. So they've started to get the passing game going. And yes, Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, when they were at Washington, won a lot of close games, and they didn't run the ball a whole heck of a lot, and their defense did enough. This team feels very much like that. I just don't trust that the Oklahoma offense can go to Tuscaloosa and play a unit that has improved significantly from last year and over the course of this very season. Has Alabama had a lot of success with running quarterbacks defensively? No. But Vanderbilt also didn't score many points. I think it was, 17 in the game? I think that's where we'll keep with my prediction that I mentioned earlier this week on the show. I just don't trust the Oklahoma offense. I really don't. They don't run the ball consistently. John Mateer is up and down, still battling a couple of different injuries. Yeah, give me Bama 31-17. -5.5, that's fine. Bama by double digits. Another pick, Duke -4.5 against Virginia. I mentioned earlier this week that this would be one of my best bets. This is not strictly a Vegas pick. It's one that I can certainly talk myself into whether, Duke is favored as an unranked team or not. But I don't know how many times this year. I should have kept track. This would have been a good thing to keep track of. Someone's got to have this stat out there somewhere. If I trusted AI more, then maybe I'd ask them. But when an unranked team is favored over a ranked team in the AP or playoff rankings, that's got to make your alarm bells go up. Or when a line is not as big as you think it would be. I actually had Virginia earlier this year covering, not beating, but covering against Florida State when the Seminoles were still a hot commodity. Mike Norvell might become I don't know about hot commodity, but a commodity on the coaching market here if things don't turn around. I don't know if they will. And so For Duke in this spot at home, I think last week they were looking ahead thinking about this game because they know even as a currently 4-loss team, they could win the ACC. They're a 1-loss ACC team, and they can absolutely win this one against a Virginia offense that struggled last week. They'll get going a little bit more. Chandler Morris will get Virginia rolling more than they did last week. Just 9 points against Wake Forest. Manny Diaz is a former defensive coordinator, but Duke's defense hasn't actually been very good this season, so I think there will be plenty of points, but I think Darian Mensah outplays the Virginia offense. Just Darian Mensah, that's all you really need. I mean, what more do you need? Guy's making $4 million to play quarterback, and after a slow start, he's lived up to the billing. So I like Duke to win. I like them to cover the 4.5. I'll take the Blue Devils 34. and I will take Virginia to notch 27, but it's not enough end of the day. 34-27, Duke over Virginia. Another one, the only underdog I've got this week. I've been riding the favorites a lot in the last couple of weeks. That might come back to bite me this week. We'll just have to wait and see. So I found an underdog I like, and it's Maryland plus 14.5 at Illinois. The Illini have allowed 260 yards or more, throwing more than I'd like. Now, the Maryland passing attack with Malik Washington, who got off to that hot start, has not been as effective as it should be. They've also struggled running the ball, but kind of like Illinois, and they played earlier this year. It's funny that I bring this up. Or kind of like Duke, I should say. Illinois' defense, I don't like their physicality. They have been incredibly porous, particularly in the secondary. I think this is a get-right spot. Illinois wins, but it's too many points. I think Maryland covers 34-24. The Terrapins have not won since they beat Wisconsin in Madison earlier this year when they were a 10.5-point underdog on the road. They won the game outright 27-10. That's the last time they won a football game. So that's not happening here. They're not going to Champaign and winning. They are going to go to Champaign and cover the 14.5. 34-24. I'll take the Illini to win. Second straight week that I'm going with the UNLV Rebels. Dan Mullen's team was all offense and no defense, and there's still a lot of offense, but the defense is getting better as this season is progressing. And Dan Mullen right now is not being talked about a lot as a coaching candidate. I think it's because it's his first year at UNLV. Other schools probably want to see. Obviously, Barry Odom just went UNLV to a Power 4 at Purdue. I think that other schools are waiting to see how the offseason goes, what he can do in the portal, how his high school recruiting is, and all of that. But right now, UNLV is 7-2, and the Rebels can play offense. Bet them last week on the road here on the best bets with -4.5. Here they're -6.5 against Utah State at home. The Aggies have not been good on the road this year. They are 0-4 on the road, and in conference play, they've got a couple of higher caliber opponents on there. It's not fair to judge them. Okay, in Mountain West play this year on the road, Utah State is allowing 38.5 points per game. They gave up 44 to Hawaii, 33. Might have that number wrong. Anyway, it's a lot of points. It's a lot of points. I'm just remembering incorrectly. I trust that I jotted my notes down correctly here at 38.5. So Utah State has not been good on the road. I will take UNLV to win. I think they go over 40 in this one. 45-27. I think UNLV rolls Utah State. Staying in the Mountain West, Boise State is starting a former walk-on at quarterback. There's an interesting story out there you can go read about what he views his future as with the Boise State program, how he wants to be a starting quarterback. And you know what? Good for him and good luck, because you're going on the road to play a San Diego State defense that is filthy good and got embarrassed last week on the road at Hawaii. Bounce back spot here for the Aztecs. I think this is a pretty low-scoring game because the Aztecs' offense is just okay. But Boise State, this is not the time to be having to make a change at quarterback because Maddox Madsen isn't healthy. I'll take San Diego State 23-10. They cover the 2.5 at home. And I mentioned earlier, Louisville, -2.5 against Clemson. Again, in a bounce-back spot. There are a number of those in the best bets this week. 3, to be exact. San Diego State is in a bounce-back spot at home. Louisville, bounce-back spot at home. Duke, bounce-back spot at home. And those teams combined giving up 9.5 points. So I think they get it done. Louisville, -2.5 against Clemson. San Diego State, -2.5. All odds provided by our friends at FanDuel. UNLV, -6.5. Maryland, +14.5. Our lone underdog of the week. Alabama, -5.5 against Oklahoma. That's the biggest game I've got on the board. And Duke, in a playoff implicated game in the ACC, -4.5 against Virginia. Let's see if the best bets stay hot. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.